students, welcome to the second lecture on an introduction to Indian writing in English. In the previous lecture, we looked at the nomenclature and the definition of Indian writing in English. And in this lecture, we will be looking at the history of Indian writing in English. In what historical context does the Indian writing in English emerge? For that, we'll have to go back to the 18th century colonial India. So we are using here in this lecture as a reference point Arvind Krishna Mehrotra's essay that has been circulated with you guys. So the beginnings of this literature can be identified in the events of 18th century. Mehrotra identifies 1800 as an arbitrary starting point for this literature. Why is this arbitrary? It has significance, the year has its significance, but it does not have any particular literary significance. There was no major literary event or literary publication in that event. That is why it is mentioned as arbitrary. But it is significant because by 1800, when we enter the 19th century, colonial India has been British colony. India has been established as a British colony, and any competition from other colonial powers like Dutch or French has been quelled, and internal strives from other internal resistance from many of the small kingdoms of India has been quelled as well, except for the Maratha kingdom. In 1757, during Battle of Plassey, the Mughal emperor was defeated, especially with the East India Company, along with the help of Jain and Hindu traders of Bengal, orchestrated the fall of the Mughals. And in 1764, Battle of Buxar ensured the defeat of Mir Qasim, and this kind of established British as the superior powers especially in the northern parts of Indian subcontinent. In 1765, the Treaty of Allahabad was signed between Mughal Emperor and the East India Company. As part of this treaty, Mughal emperors assigned the East India Company as Diwan of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. This is considered as a truly inaugural moment of British Raj. Military-wise, economically, and legally, control has been transferred from the Mughals to the East India Company and to the British Empire. On the screen, you can see an image by Benjamin West, which was painted in 1795, and it is called the Grant of Diwan. This inaugural moment of the Raj is captured in all its glory, but it's a reimagination of the actual event. The actual event did not take place in the open, and by then the Mughal emperor was a mere stamp figure and did not have the glory in which he is depicted here in this picture by Benjamin West. Once we have established the political and militaristic characteristic of the 18th century, we have to move on to this glorious figure of Deen Mohammed. Deen Mohammed wrote The Travels of Deen Mohammed in 1794. This is the first Indian book written and published in English. Deen Mohammed was born in 1759. He joined the Bengal army in 1769, and he traveled as a camp follower and a subaltern officer for 15 years with the British army. He wrote, during his journeys, he wrote a series of letters to a fictive friend, and this series of letters were later published as The Travels of Deen Mohammed. It talks about his experiences in the colonial army. In 1784, he migrated to Ireland, converted to Protestantism, married an Irish woman, and later settled in London running an Indian vapor bath and shampoo bath. So he was a shampoo specialist towards the end of his life. But his contribution to Indian English literature is very, very significant. But because it is the first Indian book written and published in English, The Travels of Deen Mohammed. So he is a name to remember. But all of these events also are happening in the context of an Orientalist project of knowledge protection. In 1794, James Rennell produces the Bengal Atlas, and this begins the first project. This is the first project of cartography, of mapping the colonial Indian landscape. Many similar projects were taken up later. In 1799, after the fall of Tipu Sultan, a mapping of Mysore was initiated by Captain Colin Mackenzie and Major William Lambton. Captain Colin Mackenzie is also known for his contribution of mapping Deccan. So a process of mapping, various projects of mapping this new empire was taking place towards the end of the 18th century as well. There is a corresponding mapping of intellectual, cultural, and historical aspect of the territory, the newly gained territory as well, that was happening. A lot of pioneering Orientalists like Charles Wilkins, Nathaniel Brassey Halhed, Sir William Jones, John Gilchrist, and Henry Colebrook were instrumental in this project of Oriental search for knowledge, Orientalist search for knowledge. All these British officers who were settled in India were trying to map and understand what kind of a place intellectually, culturally, historically, what kind of a place are they occupying. They wanted to get to the details of it. Most of these projects were largely imperialist in nature. They were supposed to only be instrumental in understanding the place so that it can be conquered better, that it can be controlled better. But not all of these imperialists were merely condescending visitors. For example, Halhed, who printed the first Bengali grammar, who had clearly imperialist interests in the language of Bengali and other Indian languages, but Halhed was also influenced and taken in by Oriental mysticism. So William Jones, for example, founded the Asiatic Society of Bengal and was a polymath and a comprehensive Oriental scholar. Jones is generally widely understood as the biggest polymath of that era and the best Oriental scholar as well. He had this theory of a universalist idea of language, that all languages sprung from a common source, that is, Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit all had a common origin. And this common source from which these languages originated is, though it no longer exists, it means that all people was once a unified whole, that a universalist race idea was also propounded by Sir William Jones. He argued that if all languages had a common source, all of the classic languages had a common source, all human races that exist now also had a common ancestry which no longer exists. In that sense, he was propounding a possibility of Babel. You might have heard of the myth of Babel, where all the people of the world were living together, and the king of Babel wanted to build a tower to the sky, and gods grew jealous, and God created language to split the human race into multiplicities, and the project of the Tower of Babel caused the disruption of human unity. So William Jones was approximating towards a theory, a universalist theory of race that is similar to the Tower of Babel story. So this is the background, this is the backdrop in which Indian writing in English takes its shape. This is what happens in the 18th century, which leads to the colonialist project of educating the locals in English language. And we will see more of it in the next lecture. Thank you so much.